Hey guys, welcome back to Artful Ruckus. Today I am super excited because I'm going to be reviewing your graphic design portfolios. You guys sent in almost 200 sites for me to review, so while I can't get to all of them, I'm gonna go through as many as I can before I start losing my voice. Some of these portfolios are truly insane, so I can't wait to show them to you. So if you're looking to get inspired, if you're currently working on your own portfolio website, you want best practices, tips, things to do, things to avoid, then this is the video for you. Let's get into it. All right, so first up we have Evan Manning. First impression is that this really captures your attention. It really draws you in, it makes an impact. You have a lot of motion. You have a parallax effect here on the mountains. You have your text scrolling in here. You have some glows down here at the bottom. So this is really visually flashy, really makes a big impact off the bat and makes you curious to see more. So I think that's a strong first impression you have here. It is a little bit more like a marketing site than like a typical portfolio website, but I think that's okay as long as that's what your audience is looking for. This is really cool, the way that the elements animate on, and then you have the actual videos animating here within the project. That's really clean. The text animates on really nicely. So yeah, this is a really fun website to just kind of scroll and see all the different interactions and animations. And then even as you're scrolling, this is a really nice touch where your navigation animates from section to section. So this is really clean. Obviously, you are a really talented web designer, UI UX designer. This is really impressive stuff. Let's click into a project here. That's a fun little transition there using your logo animation. I like the typography you have here. It has really nice hierarchy. The colors are consistent. I like that you're starting out with the problem before you even start seeing the work. So you're starting off with the logo design you did for them. You then kind of get into rationale, which I always am a proponent of telling story when you're presenting your work as a case study. And so you're doing that by talking about where you got the idea for the logo. You start showcasing other parts of the brand. So we're seeing the typography here, the color palette, getting into the UI design. So this is a really nice way to showcase the different parts of a brand. Instead of just showcasing the logo, you're showcasing that you thought through the entire brand from start to finish. At each of those junctures, you kind of give a little bit more context. So you're telling a story, you're kind of dripping the information to us as we see each piece, which that's a really nice way to go about it. Sometimes I see a portfolio that just has all of the text at the very top. And so it's just kind of an overload of information. And so by doing it a little bit at a time, it makes it more engaging. It makes it easier to digest the information. I love that you're ending here on a conclusion. So you're kind of putting a bow on it. You're kind of wrapping up the project, talking about what you learned, what the outcomes were. So this is a really nicely presented project from start to finish. You told a story. You showcased the work in the real world places where it will live and context. You showed more than just the design, the logo on a JPEG or something like that. You showed the full brand that you created. So I love this. It would be great to see if you have any metrics about how successful this project was, maybe some testimonials to give it social proof, to really drive home that this was a big, successful project. I think those things would help, but I do think that this is a really nice case study you put together here. And then just dropping people directly into the contact form is really nice too, to where if they really like this project, they can now just reach out, start a project with you. So you've made it very frictionless for them to be impressed by the work, sell them on the product, get in touch with you. So that's really slick as well. I do think maybe one thing that you could improve here is your logo wordmark typography, the E and the M being super bold and just kind of regular, and then the Evan Manning part on the right being really thin and italics. It just kind of clashes a little bit in my opinion. So I think that is something that could be improved, is kind of your personal word mark that you have up here. And since you do animate it so often, it is something you kind of see quite a bit, but I do like this effect you have here of the E and the M themselves. I just think once you kind of have your full name written out, that part could be a little bit stronger. So this motion reel you have here is super cool. I love that dark waters lighthouse animation with the rain dripping down. So it seems like you have a really wide variety of work that you're doing, and it's all at a really high quality. So that's amazing to see, and it's honestly pretty rare. So that's something to call out too, is If you do a lot of different types of design, that's great. But if you have weaknesses, like maybe you're stronger at web design than motion or logo design or whatever the case may be, only showcase the stuff that you are strong at in your portfolio, and it's a great added bonus that you can do the other stuff. But something I see from a lot of designers that they do a ton of stuff and maybe they're a lot better at one thing than another, but they show everything in their portfolio. And so in your portfolio, you only want to be showcasing your strongest work. So if there is an area that you're working on, but it's not quite up to snuff, leave that out of your portfolio for the time being until you get it up to the level of your other skill sets. But in Evan's case, that is not the case. All of this is really high quality. And so yeah, I'm struggling to find anything here that I would change. Maybe again, for my personal likes, it might be a little bit busy with all of the animation, but I do think it works. It's super slick. So Evan, amazing job, awesome portfolio. Okay, so next up we have Chris Kelly. Chris Kelly is a lead product designer, a creative leader. Looks like he works in UX and front-end development. First impression is there's a really nice layout. The typography is really clean and easy to read. The hierarchy is really well done, so I can tell that you really understand grid and layout and type. Feels very restrained, very confident, very mature. So I think that's kind of what you're going for being a creative leader. So I think that's really coming through. I like the organic kind of yellow highlighter lines you have here. They kind of fall into the background, but they help make these little links become CTAs. And this is really nice too, where you can kind of see the top of this video above the fold. So it doesn't distract you while you're reading all this information, but it does entice you to scroll down and start seeing the work. So that's a really clever device you've used there. As far as the work itself, the animation is really, really well done. And like these UIs that pop up is really clean work. It's very professional, very obviously automotive focused. So that's nice that you clearly have a niche. So that way when people come here and they're in the automotive space and they see your work, they know that you're the person that they want to work with. There's no question about what sort of space you're in and what you specialize in. So that's awesome to see. I love that for these case studies, it's not just like the company name Mercedes-Benz. You have a headline here that sparks curiosity. It makes you want to jump into it and read it, right? So you're treating it more as a case study, as like an article approach to a portfolio instead of just a bunch of logos. So I think that's really cool. And again, it sparks interest. It makes me want to click into these. Again, on the case study pages, we're seeing that really clean typography. You have a nice little intro here. I like that you're giving people the option to jump to insights if they want to see kind of what you discovered on this case study, or even just watch the video if they're not interested in seeing kind of the precursor to get there. They can just jump to the end product. I love that you are telling about the effect that this had on the client. So that's something that's really important, is that a lot of the times design is subjective, right? So I might think a design looks really good, you might not. But when you provide the actual impact to the client in your case studies, you talk about the results that they saw, the metrics that you achieve for them, the ROI from the creative work that you did, you remove all subjectivity from it, right? It shows that this was a success. It's not debatable. It was a great project. You achieved the goals. You got results for the client. And so I think that's always really important to showcase in creative, especially for Chris here being a creative leader. That's the sort of KPIs that he should be tracking in projects. And so I think that is really smart to include up here at the top. And then insights is really nice too, because not only did you get results, but also you kind of learn things along the way, and then you share that with your target audience so they can kind of start to understand your thought process, what's going through your brain, what sort of things were you doing during the project outside of just seeing the final deliverables. And then down here we start seeing your UX journey mapping. So that's great if I'm coming at this from a UX perspective and I really want to dive into your logic and see how you mapped everything out. I think that's awesome to include that. Now we're starting to see some of the design come to life apart from just the journey map. Again, this is really clean work, very professional. It's very well gridded out, laid out. We're seeing it here on mobile as well as desktop. So you've thought through the responsive design aspect of it. So really clean project. I love the footer here. Again, you're bringing in that organic yellow highlighter. So that's kind of the design motif of the websites. That's a great thing to do for a portfolio website. They're often very simple because it's more about the work than the site itself. but just coming up with some sort of motif, of some sort of concept, and carrying that throughout the website does a lot of heavy lifting to making it look more intentional instead of just a generic template or something like that. One thing that I'm not seeing up here is like an escape hatch. It looks like you've just kind of done without a top navigation for the whole website. So if I'm halfway down this project, it becomes a little challenging for me to get back to the homepage. That's just a small thing there. It also looks like you don't have an SSL certificate on the website. Not a huge deal, but that does just kind of help out with like SEO ranking and things like that. Makes people feel a little bit safer being on your portfolio website, and it's quick and easy to do. So something to look into there. Coming down, looking at the clients, again, they very much reinforce the automotive niche. So that adds a lot of social proof to your work. So that's always great to include when you have a client list like that. And then this is a cool section showing off your additional skills. So obviously up here, this is pretty laser focused when it comes to the work that you're showing. So letting people know what you're able to do outside of those very focused case studies, that's a nice thing as well, just to showcase the breadth of your work, what you're capable of. This is a really cool thing that you've done down here as far as like testimonials from people. You've kind of divided them up by keywords. So that's a really interesting and fun way to kind of showcase some of your strengths as a worker, as a professional. I haven't really seen that done before, but I think that's really a really clever way to showcase it. So yeah, Chris, this is an amazing portfolio. I think this is a masterclass of restraint, of typography, of layout, of grid, of showcasing the work, of finding a niche and really diving into that. So I think this is one that a lot of people can learn a lot from. So thank you for sharing it. All right, so next up we have Jair Torres. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I like this hero section you have at the top. I like the subtle movement you have in the back. It doesn't distract from the text, but it adds a little something to show that you thought through that piece of the design. I like the little photo of you. It's kind of like a fun little way to show off your personality. The layout here is very clean, kind of sticking to the corners. I like the typography that you've chosen. And then once again, we're kind of seeing that motion start to peak up into the above the fold area to where it doesn't really distract from your hero section, but it does pique your interest. It makes you want to scroll down. There's a really nice effect as far as like parallax, revealing this video that you have here and taking it full screen. That's a really clean way to approach that. You have a pretty wide breadth of work here, it looks like, and that's really cool to see. And I like the animations are all very professional as well. So even though it's in a lot of different verticals, I can tell you know what you're doing. The motion is all very clean across the board. Coming down here to selected work, again, I like the grid that you're working with, the typography, the hierarchy of like having selected work being larger, and then the client name being like smaller mouse type. It looks like you're using a lot of phone mockups here. So I'm assuming you're very heavily in the social space, doing a lot of stuff for mobile. So let's take a look at some work here. Looks like this is a project for Aperture. I'm familiar with them as far as making like studio lighting. I really like the way that all this text kind of animated on. Just a nice subtle way to show that everything is thought through. So that's really nice. This is a great way to start a project. So you're showing off the different skills that you used for the project, the tools you used, what category it's in. So that's something that can be confusing for hiring managers. When you see a big project, you don't always know what the designer did, like what was their role. Sometimes it's a very small role in a big project. And so just showing the case study, hiring managers could get the wrong idea, or maybe vice versa. Maybe they assumed that you had a smaller role than you actually had. So just outlining the actual parts of the project that you worked on is really helpful for hiring managers to know what role you played and what skill set you have. This is a nice intro to the project. So you're talking about your role, you're talking about the company, and then you're talking about what you actually did. So you mentioned you made over 200 key visuals for the launch of their new app in under a week. So you gave us a time frame, you gave us a number of deliverables in the project, so that's impressive. And then you talk about the fact that they were localized for different regions. So a great opening to this project. I love that these are videos, but they're not over the top, so they're subtle. You're showing off the actual motion of the campaign, but the actual mock-up doesn't move. So it's just enough motion to get you interested, but it's not overwhelming. And so that's something to definitely balance when it comes to your portfolio. I do suggest using motion using video, but make sure it's not a ton of stuff moving at the same time. Multiple videos playing, a ton of distracting elements. So this is a great example of how to keep it low key, but still visually interesting. Again, we're seeing a really nice mock-up here, some really great video. The video quality is really nice, which is something to think about as well. It's kind of a balancing act between getting the videos to play correctly without stalling, but also having the quality high enough to where they look good. Again, here you're balancing motion with a static photo, so it's not overwhelming. The work here is really clean. I like the typography, balancing the super bold font with the italic serifs. I like the color palette that you're using here. It's very trendy, it's colorful, but all the colors work together. You're really showing a breadth of work as far as seeing like the different social posts that you did, the videos, how it all came together. So yeah, this is a great project. I think, especially given the timeline you talked about and the amount of assets you had to create, I think this is really impressive, and I think it'll speak to a lot of clients that maybe are doing similar things where they need a lot of assets produced quickly. They'd feel confident that you could get that done. Down here at the bottom, I like this footer. Again, you're repeating that animated background from the header, so consistency is a nice way to establish a bit of a brand. Again, the typography is very clean. I like this little effect where you can kind of mouse over it and it actually looks like you're using a variable font that gets a little thicker and it inverts it. So that's a fun little interaction for people to play with. It's interesting that you're including portfolio updated 2024. I haven't seen that a lot where you're actually calling out that like it's been a few months since you've updated this. I think that's a bit playing with fire, I guess. If you don't update it all the time, that could make you look bad. But if you do stay on top of it, maybe that's a way to hold yourself accountable to make sure that you are updating it on a regular basis. So something I'm noticing from a UI UX standpoint is when I click on your different pages up here, the website does freeze for a couple of seconds and it doesn't let me move my cursor, which isn't super pleasant for a user, but not a big deal, but a little UI UX improvement that could be made there. So checking out your About Me page, which I do think is a nice thing to include on a portfolio, just so people can kind of get a better idea of who you are, what you're all about. I like that you have a headline up here. I like that you're showcasing some of your personality with some humor. You say it all started the day I was born. Who am I kidding? You obviously aren't here to read my whole autobiography, so you're showing a little bit of humor there, which is nice. Your About Me, you're talking about kind of what you're interested in, your career, your approach to design, so I think that's exactly what you should include. And then this is a nice addition down here where you have your degree, some workshops that you've done, tools you use, different skill sets, and even your resume to download there. So this is a really well done About Me page. You're giving them just a little bit of insight into who you are and your approach, as well as some extras here as well, like a little mini resume. So this is really well done. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into the video. If you're finding it valuable so far, please take a second to like this video, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel. As a small content creator, every single engagement counts, and I really appreciate it. All right, back to the reviews. All right, next up we have Anna Kate. She says, I'm an art director and designer who loves building brands. My first gut reaction is this has a ton of personality, a lot of color. You're not just using like regular sans serif fonts. You have a script font here. Your logo is animating. So I'm immediately getting an idea of who you are, your approach to design, what you're all about. So that's really great to be able to portray that so quickly on your portfolio. I like the art direction of your different portfolio pieces here, where you kind of have these circular cutouts with colors that all kind of go together, even though they're different projects. So that's a really nice way to art direct your own portfolio, even though the clients are different. You found a way to kind of bring them all together. So clicking into your Hilton project here, I like that you're starting things off with a little bit of copywriting, a little bit of character. You don't see that a lot in a portfolio, but I think it's a nice touch. It kind of piques the interest. It makes you want to read more about this campaign. I like that you're starting off with the challenge, but then you immediately jump into the solution as well. So you're talking about what the challenge was that you were trying to solve, and you immediately showcase the results. You're showing real metrics here, which, as I always talk about, that's really important to include anytime you can. So you're showing tangible value, tangible impact. So that's really great to see. It makes me want to see how you did that, to keep scrolling through this piece. It's nice that you're giving us the option to see the actual piece on TikTok. I will say that this button isn't working, so that's something to check out just to kind of make sure all these links are active. It looks like this next video is having some sort of error. So again, something to check out. It looks like maybe there's some technical glitches, and especially with this being the very first portfolio piece you have on your site, you want to make sure that it's really clean and buttoned up, that there aren't any sort of like technical glitches like that. This is interesting. So it's like a much larger campaign. And so I like that you've kind of broken it up into these different blocks. And so each block, this one's Hilton Pride, Hilton for the Stay, Hilton X Paris Hilton. So it's nice that you've kind of broken them each into their own miniature case studies, but also it makes sense that it's part of a much larger campaign. So they all had their own challenges and solutions and results, but it makes sense that they're all presented together on a single page. For this project, having all three of these videos side by side with the TikTok overlay is a little bit busy. Maybe presenting these videos without the TikTok overlay might make it a little bit more digestible, a little bit easier on the eyes. And as we come down, we're seeing some weekly social content. Again, looks like maybe some technical errors here. I like that for these, you remove the TikTok UI, because again, this would have been really busy with it. So good call to leave that out for these assets here. But yeah, so this is a really nice case study. Again, just clean up those technical glitches a little bit, but I love that you're showing metrics. I like that you're talking through your rationale. You're showing the challenge. You're showing the actual asset. So I think this is a great project. Next, let's take a look at Fin and Fino. Again, I like the little copywriting up here at the top, as well as the breakdown of the scope and your role. It's nice that you're also talking about the other people involved in the project. So that's something that's really nice to include. If you do a team project, give a shout out to the creative director, to the photographer, let people know who did what, just out of respect for your peers. And again, to kind of let people know what you did as part of that project as well. This is a really nice layout as far as typography goes. I like the three different fonts that you've chosen here. The ampersand here in the middle with the fins, that's a nice tie into the brand. So it's very simple, it's very typography focused, but that's that one little trick, the pop of color, the fins, that kind of brings it all together. So I think this is a really nice refined mark that you've put together here. I always love to see real photography of the work. You can tell that this isn't just a mock-up, it's a real photo. So that's something that's really nice, that anytime that you can do that, take real photos, art-directed photos, that really sets your work apart from a lot of other designers, because a lot of designers are just using mock-ups. And so that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with using mock-ups, but anytime you have the opportunity to get actual art-directed photography of your work in the real world, again, it just gives it that extra bit of professionalism. Seeing that you've thought through a vertical mock-up here is really nice. It's kind of like an alternate logo that can fit in different applications. So it's cool that it's not just a logo, you've thought through the whole system. I always love seeing sketches as a designer. I always geek out seeing sketchbooks, so that's cool to include. And I think it's great to include it where you did in the portfolio case study as well, right? So I see a lot of designers that start with the sketches and then start showing the finished work. And so that's a bit problematic, because the sketches are great to see, but they're not the cool, sexiest piece that you want to have at the very top of the portfolio piece, right? So I think this is really smart, where you started off with these really beautiful images, art-directed photos, the finished logo, and then you start showing the concepts and how you got there. So I think this is a really nice logical progression that you've done, that I think more people should kind of take this approach. Again, we're seeing some really beautiful photography here, seeing how it's applied to different parts of the restaurant. So we're seeing some coaster mock-ups. There's a fun bit of character in the photography here, holding up the shell, seeing some of the food on top of the menus, seeing some detail shots of the logo and the different aspects of the brand applied to the menus themselves. The illustration work you've done for this is really beautiful, so amazing job with that. And then even, I'm assuming, maybe some of the old school kind of inspiration from where you started getting ideas for this style from. So this is a beautiful case study, top to bottom. I think this is exactly the type of work that I like to see when I'm looking at a portfolio. So awesome work on this, Anna. Next up, we've got Lauren Elyse. Really like what you have going on when you first open the page here. This typography and layout on the left is very brutalist. It's just one font, one size, one hierarchy, so that's very trendy right now. I like the kind of script serif that you have up here for your name. That's a nice way to kind of break up that more brutalist approach of the navigation with a little bit of character. Seeing the work off the bat is really nice. This is really attention grabbing. I like that this first one has some motion to it. The bento is a cool approach. I will say that your bento grid is a little bit inconsistent, so the spacing between these two here on the right is not the same as these two on the left. So anytime you're doing a strict grid layout like a bento or something like that, it's important to make sure that it's like pixel perfect and that the margins and padding is all exact for each of the pieces. I like that these animate on as you scroll, and again, using some video to kind of draw people in. I think that's really smart. I think this last piece kind of sticks out to me as something that doesn't quite fit with the other pieces you have in your portfolio. The other ones are very kind of refined, very mature. And then this one feels a bit less like that. It feels a bit more like an ad or something like that. So that's something to think about whenever you're presenting work in your portfolio is, do you kind of have a style and an overall look? And is there a piece that doesn't match that? Because it might make sense to eliminate that piece if that is the case. So I'm super interested in this top left project here. I love these colors and the design. So let's check this out. A project for a company called Wick. Timeless and intricate, the Wick visual identity gets to the heart of a brand that values sustainability as much as they do craftsmanship. Wick is a candle brand dedicated to crafting handmade soy wax candles. So this is nice. They're giving us a bit of context on the company, context on what this project is going to be about as far as making packaging, identity. I like the font that you've chosen here. The colors are really nice. They work well together. The flame in the eye here is a nice little visual trick that you've used for the logo design. This is cool that you're giving us the context as far as how you come up with these intricate like paper cutout designs. I was interested in that. I didn't know if maybe they're supposed to be like Rorschach designs or something like that, but that's really cool because it's certainly something that sparks curiosity. So giving the viewer of your portfolio what they want by telling them about those interesting little pieces, those create little moments of delight as someone's going through your work. So love that you included that. This is a really nice photo or a mock-up of this box here. Cool that you're showing us like kind of the die line cut out of the box as well as putting it over an image. So it's a little bit nicer than just throwing this on a white background and putting it up. Actually putting it over an image is a nice way to make it look a bit more intentional. There's a really nice photo mock-up here of the different boxes. We can kind of see those cutouts, how they work with the different colors on each of the boxes. Now you've got the actual candles here. I'll say this mock-up feels a little bit more artificial than your other mock-ups. So this might be one to take another look at as far as just finding something that better matches like this very organic photography style. This feels a bit more like a stock mock-up. This is a nice way to kind of show off the full candle, like a full 360 of it. I will say that like doing it as like a stop motion GIF, I'm guessing maybe you did that to keep the file size down. I think, in my opinion, doing it just as a video of it spinning in real time might be a bit more attractive than like the stop motion. Makes it a little bit jarring to look at. But yeah, so this is awesome work. You obviously have a mastery of color, typography, of branding. I like the way that you've laid everything out. The art directed mock-ups are really nice. So this is a really great project. So next, let's take a look at the Lola. I like this logo mark that you've done here. So it's a boutique hotel that needed a brand refresh. Again, we're seeing a really nice color combo here. So obviously you really have a mastery of color palettes and color theory. One thing with this animation is all these logos are just like 1 or 2 pixels off in each of the boxes. So as you watch the animation, it just kind of jumps around just a little bit. So that's something that could be cleaned up just to make it look a bit more intentional. It's a really nice way to show the brand in context, showing it in its real world applications. It's nice that you can use the star kind of as a standalone icon, and you've created a LL lockup as well. So yeah, this is really clean work. It does feel like a lot of imagery and mock-ups and just feels like kind of the logo on a lot of different stuff, which that is important to see. And seeing it in context is really important as well. But I think maybe including some more story as you're going through here. What challenges did you solve? Like, what was your concept for each of these different pieces? How did you design them? Showing some sketches maybe. It might help add a bit more of a story to this instead of it feeling like a lot of just mock-ups. Then also, it looks like you did a ton of work for them. So seeing some results What were the tangible metrics from this? Did they see more foot traffic, more social engagement? What was the actual outcome of this project? Because I think for a rebrand of this scope, there must be a lot of different things that were tracked that they cared about. And so seeing that in the case study would really help drive home the success of this project. All right, so here we've got Tyler Graef's portfolio. I like your black letter personal mark. That's pretty cool. I like the simplicity of it. So you're not trying to do too much. That shows that you're confident in your work. You're just kind of putting it on a clean white template. You're showing the work right up front. So I think that's a valid approach. Having some motion right off the bat is really nice way to just kind of get people's attention and get them interested. I will say that this animation is pretty grainy. It looks like you've probably optimized it quite heavily as a GIF. So I would probably try to optimize it a bit less to get rid of some of like the JPEG artifacts that we're seeing here. It also looks like the top of the can isn't spinning with the rest of the can. So I'm guessing maybe that was a bit of a mistake there. So with this being the first project on your portfolio that you see above the fold, you definitely want to make sure that it's pixel perfect, that there's no errors. So that's something I would clean up there. I really like the mock-up that you're using here for Vestige. That's really nice and natural looking. Vendetta Cocktails and Coffee looks like a really fun project. I love this design that you've done here for Kind. The colors are really trendy and the design is as well. So I think that looks like a really interesting project I'd want to click into. So yeah, this looks like a really strong set of work. Let's check out Kind. That one looks cool. This is a great way to get things started when you click on a case study, just to see a nice, sexy art-directed photo right at the top, just to kind of get people excited about it, make them want to scroll and see more of it. Kind is a conceptual up-and-coming hard cider brand looking to disrupt the market with a commitment to quality and sustainability. Kind intends to present itself as more delicate and feminine, to stand out on the shelf and to align itself with highly social media marketed drinks such as Olipop. So that's nice that you've kind of thought through already a potential problem that someone in this space might be facing, right? There's a lot of competition, maybe a lot of them look more masculine, and so you've kind of discovered a lane that could be a potential solution to this challenge. It's nice that you've also thought through your demographic, being mid-20s female customer base. So I think this is a great way to present a passion project, right? I think a lot of the times when you see passion projects, it's just kind of design work that's out there, and you just kind of say like, hey, this is a passion project, look at how good I am at design. But I think this is the right way to approach it, where it's still a case study. You've given yourself a fictional problem, and then you've shown how you came up with a solution. So it's not just showcasing design. Even as a passion project, it's showing that you can problem solve, that you're thinking strategically, that even if this was a real project, that it would have been successful. So I think this is a really nice way to approach it. Looking at the work, you're showing off some social posts here, showing all the different can designs. Again, I like that they are animated. This is a cool way to show the entire label. I don't know if the grid here is super necessary, being like a more simple word mark. I like that this is kind of on like a organic, natural craft paper bag, so that kind of aligns with the brand being more natural and appealing to a certain demographic. It's nice that these cans have some ice on them to make them kind of come to life instead of just like a dry can here. So it's a great project. It's a lot of fun. I like the illustration work you've done. I like the brand that you've created. I love that you thought through it as if it were a real client. So I think that's a great way to present passion projects. One thing that's a little bit odd to me is that you have work here as a very large all caps link, but then your other links are much smaller and they're just set in sentence case. So it almost doesn't look like work is a link to me because it stands out so much. So I would just make work look like the other links, or make the other links look like work, but just make your navigation a bit more consistent there. And then checking out Sunday Sunset Seltzers. I'm seeing a theme here, so it's nice that you've kind of picked a niche. You're trying to target beverage companies, especially in the alcoholic space. So I think that's smart that you've kind of picked a lane and you're putting together multiple projects that speak to that. It's a very like retro approach with the color palette and kind of like the funky letter forms here. And so we can see that here in your description that you're looking for 70s disco style, trippy risograph effects, hallucinogenic illustrations. So we're certainly seeing that already just in a couple of images. So I like that you've talked through kind of your rationale what you're trying to accomplish. And then now, as we're going through this project, we can kind of judge it based on that, right? How well did you hit the brief? So again, it's a passion project, but you've given us some metrics to kind of judge this project by. I really like the overlay effect here of like the duotone, the green on the pink. That's a really cool effect that you've done. So here we see the spinning can once again. This one looks a bit higher quality, so I would try to replicate this quality on the homepage. Again, fixing the top that doesn't spin. Here you're showing us some out-of-home advertising. So again, seeing this in context of where it would live, putting together some poster designs. I love that the can has some depth to it. It's kind of popping out of the composition in front of the typography. This is really fun that all the different fruit have eyes and they kind of wink at you. So definitely aligns with kind of the trippy vibe that you're going for. Also gives a lot of character, gives you things to play with in social campaigns. I could very much see that coming to life. And then this is a really trendy, on-theme, art-directed photo mock-up here. So I think that works really well as well. So yeah, great work, Tyler. Awesome portfolio. All right, so here we have a portfolio for Julia. Julia is a visual designer specializing in branding and art direction. So I like this kind of stark hero section that you have here. It's on the grid, has a nice hierarchy to it, a nice layout. This is a really cool scroll effect. As we scroll down, your work kind of comes into view. So that's really engaging. It's a nice way to show off your different projects. You tell us a little bit about yourself, so that's nice. Looks like these are also clickable, so that's really cool that not only is this a visually engaging element that kind of gets us excited to see your work, but if something really catches my eye up here, I can click into one of the projects specifically. And then if people didn't catch on that you could do that, you're showing the work once again. So I think that's smart, just in case people didn't click on those projects up above, or maybe they wanted to see some more context before they committed to a case study. I like the animations you have on the text here. That's a nice subtle animation. Again, it shows attention to detail. I like that you have some video here. And then this is a nice footer section here. It's really in your face. It goes full screen. It really drives home that the goal of this is to get in touch to hire you for a project. So yeah, I think this is a really effective landing page. Let's click into one of these projects, Ara Industries. So this project is bringing Ara Industries' legacy into the future with modern, streamlined brand identity that reflects its expertise in mechatronics. This is a nice parallax effect you have here as you scroll. Again, it's subtle, but it just kind of adds a little bit of depth, a little bit of visual interest to the project. I like that you're giving us more context. At first, I was a little afraid that this was going to be kind of the only context we got, but you very quickly gave us even more. So I think that it's really nice. You also just check out the website. So assuming you did that web design, that's always great to see it in context. Here we're seeing a bit more work before we get into the challenge. So you're kind of drip feeding us information. So I love to see that, where it's not just a huge block at the top of everything about the project. You're kind of showing us a piece of work, talking about an aspect of the design, showing us another piece, talking about the challenge. So you're kind of drip feeding us the information, which makes it more like storytelling instead of just a brick of text. I will say here that you're referring to their visual identity as outdated before you came in and updated things. So I would kind of refrain from using any potentially negative descriptors of a client's work on your portfolio, just so that way you don't offend anyone or make people think that you're speaking ill of the client's previous designer. Here you're talking about the solution, which is great. You're saying that the website was redesigned to improve usability and accessibility. I think that's really cool. It'd be even cooler if you included some metrics here, talking about how you did that, how successful it was, right? Talking about we improved contrast of colors to make them abide by accessibility standards, and showing off different accessibility wins that you had, but with tangible figures, because all that stuff is very trackable and very kind of concrete. So when we come down, we're starting to see the website that you're talking about, seeing like a bento layout of some out-of-home advertising. So you did a good job of showing us how the brand affected a lot of different parts of the company. So that's great to see. And then you finish off with the result. So again, that's really nice. It says here they earned an award the following year, which that's great to include any awards that you've won. It says it's in Best Knowledge Supplier, so I don't know. I guess I don't know what that award is. It doesn't sound necessarily related to design, so that might be nice to kind of make that more clear as to how your design helped them win that award, just so people don't get confused as to what that is. So next up, let's check out Coffee Koi, a brand identity that captures the energy of great coffee and the artistry of sea life, all while carving out space for local independent coffee culture in Kenwood, Ohio. So I like these different bags you have here, the color combination, the illustration is fun, very organic looking illustration. So I like that kind of coincides with like the local independent coffee culture aspect you talked about. Again, dripping some more information to us as we scroll down. It's like, so far I'm only seeing these coffee bags. It's kind of the same mock-up again and again. We do have a little card here, which is nice. So I'd say this project maybe feels a little bit lacking from a variety standpoint. We're just seeing the bag. It looks like you did illustration and some typography, and so it'd be great to see a bit more focus on those different aspects. How did you come up with a logo? How did you illustrate that? See some sketches, close-ups of it, some different applications outside of just the coffee bag. So I think there's some opportunity here to expand this case study to show a wider breadth of work. Next up, we have Seb's portfolio. So I really like the cleanliness of this. When you go to it, it feels very like UI UX designer. I like this little animation you have that just kind of goes through some different cards, giving off some of your personality. I will say that it kind of jumps when it cycles between the cards, so maybe you could clean that up where it's a bit smoother of a transition between the different cards. Like the animation off is very smooth, but then when they jump between the two, it's a little bit jarring. I like that you have the work popping up here. Maybe a little bit more negative space below the hero section would be nice, just to not crowd this top area. This is kind of cool that you have this ever-present taskbar at the bottom that pops up, just that way people can always contact you at any time if they see something that strikes them and they're really interested in the work. They don't have to waste any more time. They can just jump right into the contact form. So I think that's nice from a user perspective. So all of your work definitely has an aesthetic to it. It's very clean. So that's nice from a client or a hiring manager perspective. Is I know the kind of work that you do. It has a certain look to it. And so if my company has that look, I know that you're the right person for the job, right? So that's really nice to have that sort of clarity in your work. It's cool they have an option to book a meeting here. If you really just want to jump into a project, I can just book it directly instead of having to send you a message and finding what times you have available. So that's a nice way to make it easy for clients, again, just to start working with you, remove that friction from the process. Down here at the bottom, I would say this is, you've got too much white space going on here. There's a bit of a dead zone before we get to this little footer design. Let's check out one of your projects. Oh, that's interesting. So it's actually like a modal window that pops up instead of its own page. That's cool. I like it from a design standpoint. It might be a little bit challenging from a UX standpoint, to where if you ever wanted to send someone this project directly, like the URL doesn't change. So you wouldn't be able to send them to Trace directly. Maybe you already have a workaround for that, but that's one potential challenge with this approach. Again, this is very clean. I like the typography you have going on here, the use of gray and black to kind of draw people's eyes to the more important aspects of it. You're using like a bento grid to show off the work. You're using motion. I love this color combination. I like the circle line here, the way it adds depth to the photo. It's a really nice way to have something that's very straightforward and very clean and kind of minimal. But this one little trick of the swirl adds that visual interest. It makes it feel very thought through. There's a really nice mock-up here of the laptop. Looks like it has like a pixel grid applied to it. I don't know if maybe that's to mask the JPEGiness of a GIF. So that's not super clean looking, I would say. If you can just find that middle ground of compression and quality, that would be my recommendation for that. Yeah, so this is a nice project. It's very clean, very minimal. Once again, one thing that you did note up in the top here and kind of the intro is that you created a full design system for them. And so we're seeing it kind of come to life here in some of these different elements, but it'd be great to see that system as well, right? So showing off the typography and the color palette, showing kind of more intentional design decisions. That way, if I'm a creative looking at your portfolio, like an art director, creative director, I can kind of see that thought process, how you got to these end results, because you're showing the end results and they're beautiful. I can tell that you're a good designer, you know what you're doing, but it would be great to see more of your thought process of how you got to these end products. Another thing too with this modal is that there's not really a clear way to get out of it. There's not really like an X up here or something saying like go back to the main page. So again, from a UX perspective, that would be nice to have that. It also looks like you can still scroll the main page while you're in the modal. So that's a bit odd. I don't know why someone would want to do that. So maybe removing their ability to scroll the wrong page on accident type of thing is another potential way to make it a bit more accessible. So let's check out this project here. Looks like it's for a pitch deck design for multiple clients. This is nice that you're calling out that your work has helped secure partnerships with Fortune 500 companies, close major deals. Maybe good to include some of those metrics, just a high level overview of how many clients you've helped, maybe some of the funding rounds they've been able to achieve, stuff like that, just to add some more tangible metrics to your results. This is a really nice looking deck here. It looks like maybe this is all it is, just kind of like these hero images of each deck, which they certainly look nice, but it'd be great to be able to see more of those details of each deck so I could really dive in and kind of get a feel for the layouts and things like that. They're a little bit high level to really have a big impact. And then if I try to click into them to learn more about them, clicking anywhere on these modals closes the window. So again, that could be frustrating from a UX perspective, that I really love this deck. I want to see more about the design. I really want to dive into it, and I click it and it goes away. A little frustrating. So potentially something that could be cleaned up there. Next up, we have a portfolio for mood. It looks like this is actually being presented like more of a studio instead of just a solo designer. That's certainly something to think about when you are presenting your work. I know that's a question that comes up a lot, is should I use my real name? Should I try to come up with a studio name? And so if you are going the studio name route, that's totally fine, but make sure that you're using that to attract freelance clients. Whereas if you're trying to get an in-house full-time job, you want it to be your real name, right? You don't want them to think that you're moonlighting, doing like your own agency thing while you work full-time at the company. So that would be my delineation there, depending on what sort of roles or clients you're looking to attract. This is a really pleasant scrolling experience here. So just like one click of my mouse wheel, it jumps from project to project. I love the subtle animations that you have here. It's really fun that your logo for mood changes depending on each project, and it looks like it's actually randomized. So that's pretty cool that you've kind of figured out the coding to make that happen where it gets randomized from project to project. So that's a really fun little moment of delight in your portfolio that, again, a lot of the times portfolio websites can be a little bit dry. So finding those little subtle moments of delight that you can use to make them memorable, to make people enjoy using them, I think that's a great thing to include. I really like the work I'm seeing here. This one is a lot of fun. I love all these little marks. It makes me think of like the logo modernist movement. So that's really cool. It looks like you can click into each image individually, but it looks like maybe there's not a way for me to dive into these as full-blown case studies. It looks like each project just has this kind of short intro here and then 4 images, and that's it. So for myself, when I'm thinking about working with a creative or an agency especially, I want to see more of your thought process. I want to see a full-blown case study that shows the work, your process, how you got there, the challenges, the results, metrics. See all this work kind of applied to a full-blown brand. How does it look in the real world? How does it look on posters and all this type of stuff? So when you just present 4 images and a few sentences, it's nice that it's very concise, but also it's challenging for people that want to do a deeper dive on your work and really get to know you. So for myself, I personally like to see case studies with a bit more rationale instead of just a few images for each project. This one has a ton of fun. I love that it's like the beard and the hair with the text in it. Feels very like fairy tale type approach illustration. I love too in the background here you have what looks like paper cutouts. So that's a really great backdrop here instead of just like solid color. So you're driving home the flower motif that's actually on the plant pots here and then driving that home in the background as well. So this is a really nice project. I'm seeing a lot of really cool illustration in these different projects. So it seems like that must be a skill set that you have. So I think that's really cool that I'm able to pick that up just from kind of scrolling through these projects, that if I'm looking for something where I need an illustrator, I know that you have that skill set. This is really cool. I love the playfulness of this logo, and I feel like it matches the look of these plant pots really well, where like they're these little animals or something like that with horns. And so that's a really cool brand identity. Again, I wish I could click through and learn more about it and see more images and really do a deep dive, because this is a really cool looking project. So yeah, this is a great website. I love the playfulness of it. I think the work is really strong. I just think a little bit more context for each of them would go a long way. Okay guys, I hope all that amazing work got you inspired. I hope the best practices help you improve your own portfolios, help you get hired, and help you find more clients. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now go out there and make a ruckus.